This is the second video for 7.3, 6.3 in the 6th edition. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can solve an equation, solve a system of equations by using a matrix equation and then using the inverse matrix. Okay? So here's a system of equations, 3 variables, 3 equations. So if you remember stuff we did yesterday, we learned how to put an equation like this, in a system of equations like this, into an equation in matrices, right? So we start with the coefficient matrix. Okay, so we're just looking at all these coefficients. Okay, a 1 on the x and so on. So it's going to be 3, 2, 4, 1, I didn't leave myself enough room, and 2, 1, 12. Okay, so those are all the coefficients. We multiply that by the variable matrix, so that's just x, y, z. And that equals the answer matrix, which is 2, negative 3, and 5. Okay. So when we have an equation like this, remember that if we multiplied these two here, if we multiplied this by this, right, it gives us 3x plus 2y plus 4z, which is exactly what we had in our first equation. Okay, so what I have here is really equivalent to my system. Okay, it's equivalent to my system of equations. Now think about this. See, I could even write this, if the first one is A, and the second one we call it capital X because it's the matrix for variables, right? Equals C. That's exactly what I have if these are all matrices. Now, if I had this in a regular algebraic equation, right? If I had like 2x equals 8, I would divide by 2, or I would multiply by 1/2, right? Well, 1/2 is the multiplicative inverse of 2, right? When you multiply them together, you get 1. That's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to get rid of this first matrix by multiplying by its inverse. Okay? Now, we learned in the last video how to find inverses, so I'm going to tell you what the inverse is, so that we can finish in this video talking about the equations. But you'll practice finding these inverses and be able to find it. So you would go off and you would find the inverse. I'm going to tell you that the inverse of this matrix, is 9, negative 10, negative 8, negative 12, 14, 11, negative 1/2, and 1/2, and 1/2. Okay, so that's the inverse matrix. Now, what I want to do is I want to multiply, so we have to keep the equal sign equal, just like we always did before, right? We have to do the same thing to both sides of the equal sign. So I'm going to multiply by the inverse matrix on both sides Okay, so I put it on that side, and then I'm also going to put it on this side. Now, I have to do it on the left because that's the only way I can multiply it. If I do it on the right, I won't be able to multiply those two matrices together. But besides I did it on the left on the other side, I should be able to do it on the left on this side, right? Okay, so here we have, oh, I forgot the one I'm multiplying it by. Okay, so these two, I don't really have to do this multiplication out if I know for sure this is the inverse. I know it will give me the identity. In fact, all that will be left on this side of the equation is x, y, and z. Okay, because they're inverses. The inverses, so they cancel each other out. And then on this side of the equation, all I have to do is multiply that inverse function, or inverse matrix, by my answer matrix. Oops. Okay, so when I multiply, I'll take first row, first column. Okay, so I have 9, -10, -8, 2, -3, 5. I'm going to multiply them. That was not. I get 18, and I get 30, and I get negative, wow, that was not an 18. Sheesh, that was an 8, and negative 40. Okay, so 30 and negative 40, that's negative 10, and 18, that's an 8. Okay, so the first number is 8. All right, let's do the second row. Second row, first column. All right, negative 12, 14, 11, 2, negative 3, 5, negative 24, negative 42, and 55. That's not negative. What is wrong with my 5s recently? Okay, so I know that 42 from 55 would be 13, positive 13, and negative 24 would be negative 11? Negative 11, right? Second one is negative 11. Okay, and let's look at the third one. Would be third row. Oh, we can get some fractions. Don't be afraid of the fractions, right? I'm really having... Ah, my gosh, I get lines every which way. Okay, so this will be negative 1. And this will be negative 3 halves. And this will be positive 5 halves. So 5 halves, negative 3 halves is 2 halves, which is a 1. Minus 1, the answer is 1. Or 0, sorry. 1 and negative 1 is 0. Okay, so that means x is equal to 8, y is equal to negative 11, z is equal to 0. Let's just go back up here to our original set of equations right here, right? Let's plug that into some of them, right? So 8, so we might have 3 times 8 plus 2 times negative 11 plus 4 times 0. We got 24 minus 22 and 0 is equal to 2. And sure enough, we had a 2 right there, right? Put it in the second one, we'd have 8 minus 11 is negative 3, and then the z is 0, so it would be negative 3. You see that it works for all three equations. So this is really a fast way of doing it if you know the inverse. Now, if you don't know the inverse, it can take a little while to get the inverse. It can take as long as it would be just to solve it to get the inverse. But these are actually used in a lot of really interesting things where we can do encoding, right? So somebody can multiply a matrix by something and you get an answer matrix, right? And then you send it to someone and they've got the inverse. And so they multiply that answer matrix by the inverse and they get back the original message. That's used a lot in coding. And in other things. But we can do things with that inverse if we know that inverse, right? This will work for any set of equations where you have the same number of variables as you have equations, right? So you can come up with that square matrix. Here's the quiz questions for this video. There are two questions, right? So if you have this matrix equation that I give to you here, first I want you to find the inverse of that coefficient matrix, that 2, 7, 1, 4. So you might have to go back to the other video if you forgot how to find the inverses. And then that's the first question. When you type it in, there's not really a good way to type in a matrix, so I'm just going to have you type in the first row and just put a single space between the numbers. Then on number 2, use that inverse that you found and multiply it by the answer matrix in order to solve and see what x and y are. When you get your x and your y, then write it in an ordered pair, which is in parentheses. Remember x, comma, y. So whatever the answer is for x, comma, whatever the answer is for y. And that will be your quiz question, both of these questions for this video.